We are live. Well, welcome to the No Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
Your next line is Tim's. Hello, Tim.
Hey, I'm Tim Wade and
I'm Joe Augustin. Welcome to the show that hardly knows. No, actually, it's a show that's trying very hard to help you, to keep you in the know. And this week, we've got a very special guest. She is a strategic sustainability specialist. She's also a very good friend of the team. Please welcome Joanne Flinn.
Hello. It's so cool. I get to be in the know with the No Show.
Yeah.
Yes. Would you want to let people who don't know you yet a bit more about yourself?
Oh, okay. So I'm an eclectic human being who's lived in Asia since I was 12. I lived on 5 continents before I got to the Philippines. And I am completely utterly focused on how we can make the changes in the world. So it's one that each one of us who's listening and alive now would like to be alive in a decade. Hence sustainability. Oh, yes. And I have a right brain that's a huge artist as well. So occasionally you get that perspective showing up. She's got a lot of opinion in that one. There you go. Andrea.
Well, no, it's true. I've known you for a long time. You are one of the unusual left and right brain people. We need more of you in the world.
So I'm going to introduce Andrea because we didn't really introduce Andrea, but Andrea T Edwards well, I guess you're the curator of these weekly summaries and the one that reads the news and is passionate about it and is the one that's running and hosting the No Show. Andrea, welcome to your own show.
Our show. Yeah, I know I'm a bit annoying in my pursuit of knowledge, but anyway, someone's got to do it, right? And I love the opportunity to share it. And this week, there's a lot going on. So should we get stuck into what's going on in the news this week? Are you guys ready?
Absolutely.
I'll do a summary. So when it's the news that really struck a chord this week, there's 2 big stories that I think are important. The first is Afghanistan continues to be in the news. But as we're seeing, it's sharing front page with Hurricane Ida. But let's start with Afghanistan because I do think it will start to diminish in people's minds. I don't think it should stop attracting our attention, but we know how the news cycle works. So obviously, as the time has gone on, there's been lots and lots of commentary on women's and girls' rights in Afghanistan. But this week, the Taliban came out and said that girls will be able to get an education, but it needs to be separate to the boys. Time will tell. There's been many, many, many heartbreaking stories from women who've left everything behind as they escaped. And they're mourning for their country. They're mourning from everything that was lost and the progress that was made. But of course, for those who didn't leave, there's also stories that are coming out, which I think also require our attention. You can't even imagine what it's like for them to be hiding in fear for their lives, for their future. They can't pursue their skills. They can't do their profession. And of course, let's not forget those who were left behind at the airport, often people who had the right to get out, that they just didn't make it. One of the examples of a female leaving Afghanistan was the female journalist who interviewed the Taliban in the first week. Do you guys remember that interview?
Yep.
Yeah. So that was held up as a moment of hope. Well, she's fled the country, obviously in fear of her life. But there's some beautiful news in the mix. So when I shared it, it got the most interactions on social media of everything I shared. A group of United World College students came together and rescued a classmate, a young lady who's part of a minority in Afghanistan who's been fighting for women's rights. They used all of their networks. They were relentless, and they got this young lady out. And to me, it's just a real sign of, hope for the future, of what young people are capable of doing. And my boys go to UWC, and it's really a core part of what the education's all about. So I was really impressed with that. An outrage story that broke this week was a plane left with rescued dogs and cats on board, as well as the man who was running the shelter. The people working in the shelter did not make it out. And the message was, it was a British guy. The message was that Britain cares more about animals than it does about humans. The business of war continues to get attention as the weeks go on. The $1 trillion profits of the Raytheons and Boeing military divisions. But then we did hear Biden say, this is the end of nation-building wars for America. Obviously, money's going to tell that story in the future. Biden's continued to get a shellacking on the world stage, just over the handling of the evacuation. But as we saw the last soldier leave and the Taliban celebrating at a ruined airport in Kabul, all we can do is hope for the future of the people of Afghanistan. But it's not looking good, not just from a Taliban perspective. For Afghanistan and many, many other countries, they are facing a bleak future because of the combined forces of war and climate change. In my weekend reads tomorrow, look out for a headline, "A New Breed of Crisis, War and Warming Collide in Afghanistan." This is a story that goes beyond Afghanistan, but I think it's something that all of us should be paying attention to because, as Kevin said last week, people who are hungry start to migrate, and we are facing a humanitarian crisis that is going to overwhelm the world. So that's what I've been reading on Afghanistan. Anything you guys have been picking up? That is going to overwhelm the world. So that's what I...
No, we're hearing somebody's echo.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No?
I'm just saying hi to Philippa, who's joined us on Facebook, and also Amanda. So Philippa Edwards and Amanda Kelly, thanks very much for being on Facebook right now.
My sister. All right, what about you guys now?
And I noticed that Lex is also proud of you.
Yeah, my little sweet Lexi.
Well, I was tuning into the commentaries around what was happening in Afghanistan and the signal that it was allegedly sending to the rest of the world about American power and how much you could rely on America as a partner in terms of staying there for the long haul and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how I happened upon it, but it was this really harsh commentator on Sky News Australia. I thought, I just thought Fox had all the. I thought they had the monopoly on the mad commentators, but no, I think they seem to spread them around. But yeah, no, they were.
No. It's the same owners, right? Murdoch owns Sky News too, so it's and it's that Republicans trying to dig and blame the Democrats for the war that the Republicans started. So I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
Yeah,
this is Australia, though.
Yeah,
but it's still Murdoch, right?
Yeah, there's lots of criticism about Biden and the signal it's sending about American power and the signal that it's sending out in terms of the decline of American power. And I think one of the things they did mention was quite interesting. I didn't have time to go and dig deeper into that, but there was talk about how China is engaging the Taliban. But that was a. On one hand, you could tell it's really, really biased, but on the other side of it as well, I was just curious about what real change looks like as they're moving forward there. What is the future going to be like?
Yeah, well, I think the China, Russia, Pakistan friends to the Taliban. I mean, it's a good thing from a humanitarian perspective. At least we know the vaccines can get into Afghanistan through those, especially through China and Russia. They've both got their own, and potentially food aid, which is going to be critical. But, it doesn't, a lot of the commentary, a lot of the news commentary, it's so short in its focus. If you look at the arc of history, America's not going anywhere for a while. They've got some credibility to get back. I think, Biden is going to be a builder of relationships around the globe. There's no question that he's going to do that. He's not Trump. So, the Europeans don't like him very much at the moment, but they'll get back on track. But yeah, Sky News is definitely an interesting channel to watch. And what are your thoughts on the news around Afghanistan?
Well, this is really weird. It reminds me of the commentary that I did my high school in the Philippines, so which is not far at all from Vietnam, and it was pretty much the tail end of the period, and the history writing of what happened in Vietnam and how America had failed, and it's the same narrative that's going on now, just a different country, a different set of things that have happened that history will have its own view on. Sets of tragedies within the country, sacrifices by people who went in and feel like what they've done, is for naught. I'm hearing of soldiers in America committing suicide, feeling that their time was wasted. But equally, Afghanistan the same way that Vietnam is now bearing the who do we become now after. And yet if we look at now, 20, 30 years on, Vietnam is a thriving country. Yes, it's operating from a different value system than some other countries, but there are millions of people there that are doing okay. And then to your point of history, if we take an even bigger arc on it, I mean, the British Empire kind of ended up learning that you can't hold a nation hostage if the nation doesn't want to be in the game.
Yeah, interfering with other countries, for your own ideals. I think those times should have been over a long time ago, but we don't seem to be very good at learning our lessons. So moving on to Hurricane Ida. I don't know if you guys were gripped by this. I went to bed on Sunday night quite afraid of what I was going to wake up to. Katrina really had a big impact on me and the way that played out. But Sunday was also the 16th anniversary of Katrina, so obviously the emotions were running very deep in New Orleans and in Louisiana. When I woke up the next morning, I was happy to see that the levees didn't break, so we weren't facing the scale of destruction that we saw 16 years ago. But obviously more than 1 million customers in Louisiana and 100,000 in Mississippi were out of electricity. This matters because hospitals were out of electricity. Mold is a huge issue. Remember, we were talking about fantastic fungi last week. Within 48 hours, it becomes uncontrollable, so it really has an impact. We're still not sure of the number of deaths since where it made landfall, but right now we know that 44 people have died in America, across America, because the storm has surprised everybody. Did you see the New York City subway floods?
Flooding. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, also the tornadoes in places that I just didn't even think tornadoes hit. So the destruction, we won't know for a while. The death toll is expected to rise. But one of the pieces of news that really stunned me was the meteorologists were absolutely sideswiped by this. They had no idea that this water was coming and that it was going to have such a big impact. So why did it happen? Why was it so bad? Well, climate change. There's an article I'm sharing where they send this technology to 150 feet into the ocean and measure the temperature, and we have a warmer ocean. And when the ocean's warmer, the hurricanes are bigger, they last longer, and they dump more water. Is this the moment that America wakes up? Because, of course, this isn't the only climate catastrophe happening on American soil right now. What else were you guys paying attention to what's been going on with Ida?
Well, I was very surprised by the. I mean, of course, I mean, I'm not a meteorologist, but I was surprised by the scale at which a storm could sweep from the lower left, the western east, southwestern part, and make its way through the mainland and across to the right to New York.
Yeah.
That aspect of it, which was really surprising for me, was how much moisture was in that storm, because it held enough moisture to dump on everywhere else at the tail end of that trip, as it hadn't come off the sea. So that was a really crazy thing. Yeah. I think the estimate was at the start of the storm, it was like 12 to 15 inches of rain, and even at the end, it was about 5 inches, which is a crazy amount.
Yeah, no, it was pretty shocking. And we've had a lot of rainfall out in Asia as well. I know Singapore's been experiencing some flooding and unexpected rainfall, right? The world is going mad, right?
So here was a weird little factoid that came across one of my feeds in the last week, was that with the level of warming that's going on, the atmosphere can hold 7% more water.
Wow.
And that's just the current one. And I'm looking at the rains that we're seeing at the moment and going, well, if we can get a month's worth of rain in an hour and a half in Singapore, which was yesterday morning, water reservoirs are full. And what we're seeing, in Ida and then other floods that have been earlier on this year. But it balanced off, I hate to use the word balance, it's not the right word, but then other places, no water arriving. So the droughts and the desertification that's happening elsewhere. So, the amount of water on the planet's the same, but it's just going in really different places and in really different volumes.
Yeah.
That's a massive.
Yeah, we're experiencing a global drought. So yeah, you're right. There's no new water is created, and so it's always the same amount of water. It's just where it ends up, and well, we're starting to see the beginnings of what that looks like, right? And still, countries are saying they won't make any changes or get to net neutral until 2050, 2060. I mean,
or 2070.
Oh, who's 2070?
Well, there's a bunch that haven't really declared and kind of going, we'll do our, we'll try, we'll try 2070.
Yeah.
Hey, actually, it means somebody else will do it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do anything. Somebody else will do it, maybe in 2070.
And that's what the governments have been saying, right all the way along, right? Well, let's wait.
Anna's already getting hot. She's taking.
I'm getting hot already.
She's playing Skip News at the moment. So, okay, what's next?
All right, the climate crisis. What's new? Okay, so we've talked about Hurricane Ida and why it's as bad as it is, but the US is also dealing with 2 mega fires on the west coast. So on the east coast, they've got rain. On the south, they've got obviously rain and hurricanes, but on the west coast, they've got fires. So we've got the Dixie Fire and the Caldor Fire. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. Caldor has burnt more than 200,000 acres, and it's currently impacting Lake Tahoe. And Dixie has burnt more than 800,000 acres.
Wow.
But don't worry, the Biden administration has announced plans this week to open 80 million acres of the Gulf of Mexico to oil and gas exploration. That makes sense, doesn't it? It's not a choice. It is about complying with the court order requiring it to resume lease auctions. We can't eat money. Yeah, we might not get that message in time.
That's going to be an interesting one, just from a point of view, how the bidding for those leases will go. Because I'm like, one of the big, messy pieces in this whole one is the, carbon pricing conversations that are going on. And some of the numbers on that one, it's like, they're not talking $10 or $3. They're talking hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Which kind of changes the economics of some of these sorts of things,
I don't know. When are we going to get to the point where we just say that's it? No more new refineries, no more new digging, no more new. We just have, if we're going to get to the end of the fossil fuel era, then we need to start making the steps rather than continuing as we've always continued.
Some countries have done this. Some countries have actually done this. So I was talking to the ambassador from Chile at end of July. So about 6 weeks ago. And Chile has made that commitment. They're actively decommissioning fossil fuel power stations and strongly building their renewable energies. And it turns out, Chile, who's, this long, skinny country up and down the coast, is in a weird position of having the world's driest desert at one end, which evidently has got an awful lot of sunshine and can literally basically do 24-hour stability. Evidently, they've got some tech that will allow 24-hour power generated out of this, which I just think is mind-blowing from what I understand of solar power. So I'm like, wow, this is a cracker. And then down south, Patagonia, which is absolutely beautiful, but evidently is the center of winds. All the winds that are running around Antarctica whip through there. And so they've basically got these two things. And they're just going like, renewable energy is us. Come.
Yeah, maybe Australia could learn from that.
I did ask our Australian ambassador about that, and he had an interesting opinion, actually. He was incredibly diplomatic. Actually, he was very political because he's a former politician. He comes from my home state, Tasmania. And he was actually the premier of Tasmania when Tasmania went net zero.
All right.
So, but Tasmania is hydro powered.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, got there earlier, which, was the big challenge, is people making the commitment to different forms of energy and just saying, okay, as tempting as coal is, or to use a dietary thing, it's like sugar. It's like sugar is great stuff, except if you eat too much, it's really bad for you.
But Australia is the double issue of becoming a country that uses renewable, but also a country that stops shipping out the bad stuff to other countries where they're contributing to the crisis. So it's the double side, building an economy that's resilient, right, beyond coal.
I think as long as you're not on as long as you're not on the supply side of the fossil fuel industry at all, it's a lot easier for you to say, I'm going to change the way I do things. It's easy to make a large commitment because you're not taking a fundamental, peg or keg in your economy and taking it out of the equation.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge that I think politicians, especially when they're entrenched in these kind of situations, how they're going to make that move. I think it's very interesting for me to see what China is going to do in this regard, because I think they rely quite a bit on coal, and I think it's their own coal as well, and how they're going to move away from this, because I think they've shown signs as well of going into green energy. But whether it's green energy because it's a highly exportable kind of technology that the rest of the world wants, or it's something that they themselves are really going to go for as well.
Yeah. China's a complete contradiction. They've got some of the most highly advanced renewable technology in the world, but they're growing so quickly and their population's so massive that they have to still use these bad technologies like coal and steel and everything else, which is part of the reason Australia's been a wealthy country for a long time, because China needs what's in its ground, right? But China is definitely a big part of the challenge of doing what the world needs to do moving forward. So, yeah. Another report that's being released this week, which I think you guys will find interesting, is apparently US residents, but I think this would apply probably to many parts of the world, struggle to understand the terms that are being used in the international reports describing climate change and believe that it needs to be done more simply. So a message to anyone that's talking about the climate crisis, if you want to get people to understand, you've got to look at the language that you're using. So here's just one example. Rather than saying tipping point, it's better to say it's too late to fix anything. So it's a really good report. It's kind of a bit tongue in cheek, but I think it's an important message that if we're going to communicate successfully about the challenges that we face, then we need to be able to do it in the language to reach the most people. Some other news.
Andrea, can I just jump in on that one? I got to totally agree with that, because even just talking about carbon negative, carbon neutral, carbon positive, other than carbon neutral, what do the other two really mean, and from whose perspective? Which is why I always say climate positive. Let's just talk about what's positive for the climate. What's climate positive? So I'm going to take these actions in my business to do X, Y, and Z to make it climate positive, rather than carbon negative, carbon positive, carbon neutral, carbon something or other. And because it does depend on who you're talking to. I mean, that one I love. I I love redefining tipping point as it's too late to do anything. I mean, I don't love the fact that that's what's happened, but that does make sense. The other thing about the climate side from all the fires is, one of my solutions has always been plant more trees, but because of the sequestering nature of obviously the trees. But if the fires are going to increase, then do we need a plan B for trees? If everything that they sequester is just going to be put back up there when they burn, and it sounds like burning is going to increase more than decrease at this point as things are getting cooked, unless we're deciding where to do it. So maybe we just need to plant more seaweed or something.
Well, we need to look at all the different types of trees and the stuff that sequesters, because trees take 20 years to grow big enough to actually sequester. But there was a story I read a few months ago where trees are already starting to migrate. They're already moving. And most people would look at a tree as a stationary thing, but they're actually moving. They've got evidence that they're moving up hills. They're moving up north. The trees that look like they've got no chance of surviving this crisis are already starting to go extinct, like the redwoods in California, the really big trees. So there's a lot going on. But then the tropics, stop chopping down stuff in the tropics, right? Keep the trees where they are in the places that aren't burning, which potentially could help, right?
I've got this terrible Gary Larson image in my mind of trees moving as soon as they realize people are not looking at them. They go like pick up the bags and move up.
Well, it was like Macbeth. I mean, Shakespeare had it already. That was the forest moving, and of course the other one is Lord of the Rings, where the trees are moving.
Yeah. Now, Andrea, on that one about language, because Tim, some of the pieces on the trees is as sections are properly reforested, they start creating water catchment and more, that more virtuous cycle. But it does take time and a decent scale. It's not putting 3 trees in the backyard. But so it's a bigger question there. But Andrew, sorry, your comment about the wording. I also realize this other thing around sustainability. Like, we talk about sustainability and climate. Part of the piece that I realize is it's so dull. It takes me back to the boring goody two shoes who said you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. And so, from a point of view of like what's exciting to go forward with, there's also a bundle of the way it's being described in language is give up, loss, let go of, like diminish your life. Mm. And that, I would like to think there are other narratives and ways that achieve the same outcome, but have somewhat more zing.
Yeah, and the climate scientists have acknowledged that they're not the greatest storytellers on earth, right? And that they've got a job to do, but we've got a job to do to help them. And yeah. I think everyone who cares about it needs to start sort of speaking up and sharing stories and doing it in a way that their community is going to understand. And then we've got an opportunity, right? But just going back to the rest of the stuff going on. So obviously Ida, there's a whole bunch of oil slicks out in the Gulf of Mexico after it. Madagascar is on the brink of climate-induced famine. And that's just that's kind of like genocide. It has to hit a point before it can get the word famine. They're already in famine and people are eating crickets. So definitely encourage you. It's not an easy story to read, but it's an important story to read to understand what's going on. The pandemic, this is good news, is accelerating the decline and fall of the fossil fuel industry. Obviously, the only way that this is going to continue is if the government stop propping them up, which is not happening. There's a hot blob off New Zealand. I don't know if you guys have heard about the hot blob. It's the size of Australia. A hot blob is a part of the ocean that's hotter than the rest of the ocean. So a lot of the fish that in that area, they can't be in that water, but it's actually contributing to the drought in South America. Singapore, apparently, they've just said a report. Most Singaporeans believe that it's inconvenient to take action on climate change. But there's some good news. Some research have rediscovered a type of coffee that can thrive in a warmer world. So at least as we look to the future and the smoky skies and the droughts, we can have a cup of coffee. But Michael Mann, who's one of my favorite climate scientists, says that the climate crisis will not make humans go extinct, because that's a narrative that a lot of people share. But I think we can all agree that it's definitely going to reduce our ranks significantly, and we better hope we're in the right part of the world when that happens. So that's the main things going on in the climate this week. Anything else you guys have picked up on?
No, I'm just glad that you have all that. For anyone who's looking for good news and a good feeling, they just got here and they arrived and got recharged.
Okay, so depending on how you want to look at this one, this is good news. So for anybody who works with businesses and works with organizations in terms of culture and performance and change, anyone who's a strategy consultant, anybody who's into storytelling. So there's quite a number of people, hopefully, who are actually listening. This is good news, because what we've just identified is, there's a real gap in the stories and the narrative that helps people engage and connect and be excited. And secondly, for anybody here who happens to be a financial type of person, accountants, that kind of one, sitting on any boards or things like that, it's super exciting. You get to refresh your business strategy because of the Sustainable Accounting Standards Boards, which is going to be picked up by IFRS, which is the International Finance Standards Board, who sets the old financial reporting rules, has gone awesome possums and issued a report that's gone and said out of the 77 industries out there, only 8 are not affected by climate risk, and everyone has a financial impact. So guys, there's a lot of business. It's all how you want to look at it.
Yeah, lawyers as well. A lot of work there. There is opportunity, but look, I know it's not good news, Joe. I know it's overwhelming, it's frightening, but until we recognize it and say, okay, we have a problem, we need to solve it, we're not going to solve it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the No Show, just to give people just a chance to hear what's happening every week. And like, if you think about it, we've been doing this for 3 weeks. Every week there's new climate crisis information. And I've been reading this for years now, and I want people to start paying attention, because if they do, then they can understand that we need to act. And there is hope. But time's running out. We've got a decade to get this sorted, or we're in trouble. We're already in trouble, but it's going to be a lot worse. So it's not all bad. there is hope. That hasn't gone yet.
Well, the challenge really is it's much like I know it's it may not be the most cogent idea, but I was thinking about how this is really like someone back in the 80s or 90s who was a real fan of this company that was doing things a little bit different. And they were always a minority, but they had some nice values to them. And when you had that friend in your room who was always talking about this particular company, they'd be irritating and they'd always be trying to promote this. But it got to a point where people began to know what Apple was and kind of enjoyed the products that it came up with, And I think this whole thing about doing the right thing with the environment, it's a little bit like that. We have to kind of empower the people to be a little bit irritating at this particular point. I think we've got to take away the need to be nice, the allow people to be able to or empower people so that they know how to communicate stuff in a way where you can't really argue with it. I think when you do things and when you use words that don't quite get to the point and say exactly what's happening, then you don't really have to pay attention. So we need to try and figure out how to get this message out in a way that gets attention. A while ago, someone said about something about does it as well as it is right now. I think what we're looking for is actually a better way to do it. We really, really need to do it better than the way it's done right now, because obviously it's not working as we're doing it right now. It's not getting enough attention. It's not getting other people's attention. It also has to be sticky so that people can pass on the word to somebody else.
Yeah, just checking the weather. John, Vincent, Gordon, you're right. It is blue sky day today, but the weather has been pretty bad here in Singapore. It's been massive. Yeah, there has been flooding. My question, Joe, with regards to getting the message to people, even with all of this, clearly everybody here is on the same page, but what about those people who are still in denial about climate change? What about, can I show you something that I produced a couple of years ago? This will only take a little while, not that long, but it's a nice, it's an argument that I came up with to say it actually doesn't matter about climate change. It's about taking action. Whether you believe climate change is real or not, it's about taking action. And my presentation at the time was about offsetting your flying, which of course is irrelevant now because we're not flying anywhere. But I've
offset all my flights this year, Tim.
Yeah. You've offset the ball by doing nothing. So everybody's great. Everybody's actually taken action on that, which must have been my presentation. Possibly I caused COVID. So here was my argument. What about the elephant in the room? And the big elephant in the room is and that was my step 7 of this particular thing, elephant elimination, which sounds a little bit dreadful, but it's not really what I meant.
It's on the way.
What if climate change is fake? And so I had Exhibit A, which you mentioned the other time, Andrea, about Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. This is the National Day rally back in 2019. He was talking about climate change to the whole nation. And he was saying we need to understand it, we need to mitigate it, we need to adapt to it. And he was talking about $100 billion required to build a seawall that they'd investigated. They'd gone to the Netherlands to understand how they'd protected low-lying areas from rising sea levels, and that we might have to do that in low-lying countries as well, like Singapore, which is in a position, unlike a lot of other low-lying countries, where they can generate the funds to be able to build this sort of thing. So it was important. I did a comment at the time that in that pink area on screen, on the map part of the screen, not the shirt, on the pink area of the screen was the east coast of Singapore, which is exactly where I used to live. But now I've moved to the middle. I
live there. What does the pink mean?
That's the area that's going to be flooded.
Oh, Jesus.
If the sea levels rise by 1 meter and you have a storm, so usually when you have a storm, it goes up another meter. But so that means it's 2 meters from where it is now. So if it goes up a meter, for example, all of those areas are going to be flooded, and a whole bunch of places, I think it was a meter, a whole bunch of places are going to have a disaster, which is why all the MRTs have got stairs going up before you go down, which I always thought was stupid, but now I think it's brilliant. It's to keep the floodwaters out of the underground railway stations, which make a lot of sense. Anyway, so the idea was to build this huge wall, a sea-wall, and in front of East Coast to protect it, which Singapore are good at reclaiming land. It might secretly be an excuse just to reclaim some more land, but I think it's a pretty good idea. Except, of course, if you have beachfront property, which won't be beachfront anymore because there'll be a thing in front of you. Anyway, going back to this, so he did say we need to understand it, we need to mitigate it, and we need to adapt to it. And the reason we need to understand it and do something about it, even though we're Singapore and what we do is not going to make a scrap of difference to the rest of if the rest of the world isn't doing anything, is so that if we understand it and have taken action to mitigate it, we can tell others what we did. We can show them what we're doing. We can export our knowledge. We can actually lead by example. We can be talking from a position of authority in what we've done to those people who are yet to do it, for example. But it's still not addressing the elephant in the room. At the time, I was just saying that governments are talking about it. And I had people in the audience I was speaking to who were like, no. And so then I had Exhibit B, and Exhibit B was simply a global temperature change from 1850 to 2018. I don't know, that's not really doing anything. It's supposed to be doing something amazing, but basically it's going up. That was Exhibit B. Exhibit C is the one I really wanted to show you, which is this, the elephant eliminator. And my idea here was very simple. In fact, I went through a very complicated graph here where basically it's either true and fake, and I don't know if you can see below that. I can't see below it, but on the screen. But what it says is do nothing is on the left and do something is on the right. It just says do on the screen. I see, but on the left,
I thought it said poo and do, and I know one of your books, so I thought it was.
No, it's not poo. No, it's do. So the left-hand column is do nothing, and the right-hand column is do something. So if climate change is true and we do something, it's going to be the top right-hand corner. The idea is, well, we save the world. That would be the idea. Okay, so if it's true and we do something, it's saving the world. Now, what I was proposing that everybody does is I was proposing that they plant fruit trees to offset their travel, to offset their electricity, to offset a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of blog posts that I've written about the calculations about this and how much
they're really good posts. They're really good posts. We should add them into the chat on the this one.
Do that.
Really post him.
So the idea was if we plant fruit trees, the fruit. First of all, the tree will sequester the carbon, and the fruit will feed the people in that impoverished area who will take care of the tree because they can get the fruit for food and they can sell the fruit for income instead of chopping down the tree for firewood or charcoal or something. So there's an incentive, and there are programs around. It costs 40 cents to plant a fruit tree in US cents to plant a fruit tree through the B1G1 program, for example, but there's lots of other places you can plant trees through, etc. But this is what I was suggesting to these guys. Plant fruit trees. Anyway, so if climate change is true and we take some action, we save the world. If climate change is true and we do nothing, well, we kill the world. I mean, that was my sort of like two options. If it's true and we don't do anything, we end up killing the world because we're doing what we're doing now, which is.
I don't think kill the world is the correct way of saying it. We make it unlivable for humans and other life forms, but the world will go on.
Yeah, Andrea, give him a break. He doesn't speak English as a first language. Come on.
Yeah,
no,
true.
See,
all right.
We just talked about language. We just talked about that. Oh, we're not going to kill the world. Yeah, I'm going to go with kill the world because it's a little bit more dramatic. Okay. So we either save the world if we do something. If we do nothing, kill the world. Now, if it's fake and we do something, so if it's fake and we do something, then basically we help the poor because we're planting trees and feeding them fruit and they've got an income, they've got food. So if we do something and climate change is fake, then we help the poor. And if we do nothing and it's fake, we get to be smug. We can go, oh, I told you so. I knew it. I didn't do anything and it was fake and I knew it, so I can be smug. So when you look at the two options, if climate change is true if we do something, if we look at the right-hand column, if we do something, we either save the world or help the poor. And if we do nothing, we either kill the world or be smug. And it was at that point that there was this denier in the room. There was a CEO speaking, and her husband was sort of sitting there with his arms folded when I started talking about climate change. And she came up to me later after that presentation, and apparently he had leaned over to her going, okay, let's do something. Because the logic of that was, it doesn't actually matter if it's true or fake. The two I mean, it does matter, Andrea, don't get me wrong. It does matter. But if we need to do something, because we're either going to save the world and ourselves and our grandchildren's future and everything else, or we're going to help people along the way. And both of those things are good. The other two, not so good. So
yeah, but there's a win-win-win in there, depending on who you are. There's one bad thing, but there's three wins, right? Be smug is a win for some people.
It is, but it's a socially unacceptable win. Basically, it's if it's fake and you do nothing and you be smug, well, it's good on you, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not inviting you to dinner because I don't need a good on you to dinner. I need somebody who I'd rather like to have a dinner. So it's not a socially acceptable one. So the idea was to socialize it, to make it like, let's just do something.
Yeah. And I like the other emphasis, like on helping the poor. And I mean, the underlying message is we're not doing good by humanity. We've got plastic in our bodies. We have a waste crisis. There's so many aspects. Do you want your children to only know beaches covered in trash? Like there's so many ways that you can appeal to people. It doesn't, even if they don't agree with the climate crisis, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Just look around, like it's everywhere. Babies are born with plastic in their bodies, just that. Like, can you imagine, like, can you just think of that? So how do women who are pregnant right now feel about that? We're all eating a credit card's worth of plastic a week. It's in us, it's everywhere. And we still actually don't even understand the impact of that. So I don't know, you don't have to look very far to see proof that we're not doing a very good job by planet Earth and its ability to sustain us, right? But we all need to come up with our own way of communicating it like you've done. And if you've got a way of communicating it that makes sense to people, go for it. We all need to reach different audiences, and none of us can reach everyone.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's watching and you're interested in actually taking part in planting some of those trees, go check out B1G1, B1G1.com, and check out what they do. Yeah. I think, Anna, you remember B1G1?
Oh, I was there when Masami came up with the idea, and I've been a member forever and a day.
I was there too. We were both in Bali then.
Yeah.
Wow, we were at the business thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's same event. And so when you're talking about offsetting flights, so I went and calculated and literally worked out the number of flights I've taken in my entire life, and my goal is to progressively offset, just to go further and further and further back to offset those flights, to kind of go like my life. So how do I get to a point where my life kind of is?
So you had the pearly gates, and you can go, see, I offset everything. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's more the thing of it. What I realized was that if I didn't have the courage to go and look at my actual life and what its ramifications was, I was kind of being a little bit of a hypocrite telling somebody else it would be a great idea for them to do it.
Yep. So and it's not a lot. And the other thing, if you end up going and checking out those blogs, the other thing that I do talk about is a concept called triple offsetting. And my argument for triple offsetting is, and I was talking about flights at the time, but really it's about anything. It's about offsetting yourself. It's about offsetting somebody else, your neighbor who can't afford to offset. And the third one was to offset an idiot politician. Now, there's a lot of good politicians, but I wanted you to offset an idiot politician. And the reason for that is you get so fed up of offsetting an idiot politician that you'd probably write to them and say, what are we doing? So so that was the concept of triple offset. Offset yourself, offset somebody in some country that is not aware of this, is still throwing out plastic, can't they don't know, right? So offset them, and then offset the person that can actually make one of the biggest differences globally, which is a politician. And there's two, really. There's the politician, there's the global CEO, and then there's the individual. They're the three.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on to COVID? Yep, we're going to sort of get stuck into some COVID news. So just to give you a bit of a wrap up of what I've been reading. So Iceland has reported 0 deaths from COVID since May, and they say it's due to the very high vaccination rates. In the US, it continues to be out of...
I thought you were going to say it's due to climate change.
No, well, no.
It won't be called Iceland in 100 years.
Yeah, just be called land.
Yeah. In the US, COVID continues to be out of control, but it's also including much higher hospitalization rates for children. They don't believe the hospitalization of the children is because of Delta, but because there's so much more virus in the community because not enough people are vaccinated, especially in the South. Florida continues to be an amazing example of how not to fight COVID. They're penalizing schools, that sort of stuff. I honestly don't understand it. In Louisiana, before the hurricane hit, COVID was already a huge issue and a challenge in the state, and the hospitals were completely overwhelmed. And only today, 10 of the hospitals in the state have got their electricity back. So we've got to expect a big COVID surge coming out of Louisiana. Mississippi and other southern states are also suffering from COVID resurgence, and it's all about low vaccination rates. Even Canada is getting hammered by COVID because their vaccinations have plateaued, and it looks like it's going to be impacting Trudeau's chance for re-election. Southeast Asia, so that's Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, continue to face a grueling fourth wave, and Singapore is sitting in the middle of that, well protected. Australia is a land of contradictions and infighting, from the federal government to the state governments, and of course the 70+% ownership of Murdoch Media. As you can tell, I do not like the Murdoch Media. Back to the US.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah, remember he originally Australian, right? Back to the US, 4 conservative radio DJs who were talking about COVID as being fake and fake news have all died from COVID, and you've got to wonder how many deaths are they responsible for, and when will that actually start to carry some sort of consequence for those people? But the big piece of...
To Jim's point, Andrea, when they get to the pearly gates.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, let's just say I'm not a fan. But the big story around COVID that's always been on top of mind for me is the impact on the poorest people in the world. And when I encourage people to do the right thing when it comes to COVID, I'm doing it for them, because I want this over for them because they are suffering. Anyway, this week, more than 1 million infants are estimated to have died due to pandemic poverty. More than 1 million infants. But this didn't talk about those who are suffering from malnutrition, which of course is a long-term developmental issue. Their brains don't develop properly, their bodies don't develop properly. And this has always been the reason I'm trying to get people to understand that we have to do everything that we can to get this situation under control. We have to do it for the poorest children in the world. 1 million infants. I mean, do you guys find that absolutely shocking?
Yeah, no, it's crazy that's the impact of this.
Yeah.
So this is 1 million extra over those that would be dying from malnutrition anyway. Which sounds
that horrible term, excess deaths.
No, these don't even sit in the excess deaths. This is because most of these countries don't even measure that sort of thing properly. But
so if I'm going to be a skeptic asshole, then I'm going to basically say, well, aren't they in poor places that they're going to die anyway? Are we just blaming everything to COVID and that now? For example, what would be our response to that?
The poverty, for the first time in 20 years, we've gone backwards with poverty. The people, I talked about it last week, how much people are earning a day.
But is that just because it was going to level out at some point?
No, it was never going to level out. The only thing that it was going to level out is with the global crisis, and that's what's happened. And the people who get impacted by that are the poorest people in the world, and the wealthiest countries in the world who are not doing everything they can to stop the spread of a pandemic. the result is the poorest people in the world will continue to suffer more. So I'm seeing in Thailand, I'm working with a group of people where we're delivering thousands and thousands of bags of food every week to people to give them something to eat because they're starving and they need their business back. They need the tourists back. They need everything back, to an extent, right? And it's the length of time because the wealthiest countries in the world have not taken it seriously. The poorest countries did everything right from the beginning, especially in Asia. It's the wealthier countries that didn't take it seriously. And I think it's on us. This death and despair is on us. So if you're not donating to the World Food Program, please set up a monthly donation because they are feeding millions of people all around the world. The famine and poverty has increased significantly in this time, and it's devastating. And we're all responsible for that, and that's what infuriates me: our lack of responsibility for the least amongst us. But our entire society is built on the back of suffering. So, not unusual, right?
I think what this moment that just happened here between Tim and Andrea. I mean, Tim, I know you were playing the role of someone who could provide a counter argument. But we need people to be educated to the point where they are sure of their reply, like the way Andrea was. In terms of like the sentiment that you have at the heart of it, I think a lot of people share, but people don't have the courage to do it because they seldom actually have enough behind what they're saying. So they don't know that they can continue the argument. They can feel that they are aligned with you and they can feel they support you, but they don't feel that they can actually robustly go and have that argument with you. And so they don't. I have that experience in my own household as well. My wife really doesn't look forward to having a long discussion with me about anything because I'll press for details, and sometimes she doesn't have them. And I realize that it's also because for a lot of people they don't have those details, and without those details they really don't have the confidence to proceed. Like so, what you did, your vehemence only comes because all that stuff, and you can reach deeper. We haven't even gone as far as you can with that information because there's more to talk about if you need more proof, right?
And that's why I published my weekend reads, to share the knowledge, right? And I'm passionate about it. But that's a really interesting thing. When men and women have an argument, men press for more details. So my husband will press for information on memories of moments. I don't remember them. I don't remember the details in the moments. I remember other stuff, but not the details in the moments. And that's a very male thing. But pressing people for more details when they're not the sort of person.
Sorry, hang on. I got to stop you there. Did you say it's a male thing that we remember the details? Because we don't remember anything.
No, you don't remember the important things.
We don't remember what anybody was wearing. We don't remember what we ate. We don't remember what anything was. We remember him. Yeah.
My husband does. He remembers everything.
I barely remember this.
Yeah. Well,
who are you again? That's why we put names on the screen when we invent things.
Yeah, with me, when I get into arguments, I don't get hysterical, I get historical.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
using that argument, give me more data. It's a debate technique to try and invalidate something. Because very rarely, if they press you back and say, okay, so interesting, what counterbalancing data sets do you have that might...
Yeah.
But the other opportunity is, so the next time you have one of these conversations with your wife, if she's not ready to respond, say, why don't we pick this up in a week, a day, whenever, and let's have a proper chat about it and give her a chance to go and get herself prepared. Because the more you do the preparation work, the better you get at arguing or having a conversation. It doesn't have to be an argument. It can be a conversation. But some people don't like to be put on the spot, and I think honouring that's important too. So if I'm talking to someone and, you guys know how passionate I am about stuff, and they're not ready for it, I'm not going to push, because then I just make them look silly, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to shame them if they're not ready. So we've got to respect and honour each other as well, and we don't want to pontificate, right?
No. Hey, can I share something with you that made a few people laugh as we saw it. It's a picture I'm going to do a screen share, and Tim, this is how you can share a bigger picture with everybody else if you want. But if you'll share that. In Singapore, every year we have that 1 month of sanctioned littering where it's the 7th month and you can put
Oh,
food
yes.
out and drink and whatever it is. And you get to burn offerings that go into the afterlife.
Oh,
So,
Hungry Ghost Month is my favorite month. I loved it.
So Andrea, if you can share that, I put that up on the screen to be shared. If you can just throw that up.
Yeah, how do I do that? Oh, right, got you. Oh, I mean,
Yeah, so that's
no, I've got you. I've got a screen.
Ta-da!
not me. The other one.
Oh my God, that's awesome. We're doing the infinite talent thing.
That's the only one I've got. That's the,
what have I done?
yeah,
Okay,
that's the only one I've got.
That's why, Joe, I use my.
And that's why I would be never. I won't be.
I have given you the wrong one. Let me try and get that.
How about you send it to me and I put it on my thing and show everybody?
No, here we go. This is the way it goes. There you go.
All
All right, so that's the one now. You can do it. You can share this one now. There you go. So yeah, if you like to, you can burn this COVID kit and send it to the afterlife as well. It comes with 3 different kinds of 3 different kinds of vaccines.
Okay.
I think that's very respectful to make sure your ancestors are well looked after.
Absolutely, I like it.
I don't like
we
the
were
size of
a
the
little bit
syringe.
perplexed because what happens if you lost someone to COVID and then you send them the vaccines after the fact?
That would be, you'd have to be slightly diplomatic to think about which ancestor you were sending it to.
So for people,
That's why, Joe, it's called the after.
the people outside of Chinese culture, because it's very much a Chinese culture, Hungry Ghost Month. I remember when I first arrived in Singapore, I was fascinated by it. And, you'd turn up in these communities and they'd be burning a car for the, to send to the afterlife. And
Paper car.
Paper car, obviously. But there's so many. And you could go to these shops that are just full of things that you can buy, and boats, bikes, bowls, everything. I found it a really fascinating part of the culture. But you're not supposed to move during Hungry Ghost Month because then you're going to have bad luck in the house that you move into. So it's not a good time to move, is it? Or is it finished now?
Well, it's over now, and it's also important to qualify that it's not Chinese. It's a certain portion of the population that subscribes to it, and everybody else tolerates it.
Yeah. So which portion is it?
You get moon cakes with it, which is I think why most people tolerate it, because you get that's a bit of value add for everybody else.
What do you mean tolerate? Everybody?
Well,
Joe,
I think.
Joe?
Oh,
I think we have a way of doing things in Singapore where if it has to do with a religious observance by a large enough group, we tend to go like, okay, so it's religious. So we go about traffic jams can be because of a religious ceremony. We're okay with that. Smoke due to religious observances, we're okay with that. Noise because of a religious observance, we tend to be okay with that. So there is that kind of contract that allows that to happen. But yeah, it's one of the confusing things for me because it is literally the only time we allow littering on such a scale.
Yeah. Right.
There is an interesting discussion that we could have some other time maybe about any religious ceremony that in any religion that goes counter to climate issues, for example. I mean, so that one particular one is burning, but the act of cremation, all of these sorts of things could be an interesting discussion, but perhaps not for today. But it would be across religions too.
Yeah.
There is some other news.
Yeah. So what other news captured your attention this week? I've got a couple. Anyone? Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, I don't know what's happening. You veto this one if you need to, Andrea. Bangkok protests against the Prime Minister demanding resignation. Need to veto or?
Yeah, it's not a conversation I can contribute to.
Okay, how about this one? You can definitely contribute to this.
And let me be clear about why I won't. Ever since I've been a guest in other countries around the world, I believe it's very important to be respectful to the nation that I live in. And it's not because I feel censored. I just think it was the same in Singapore. So that's why. But yeah, the protests in Thailand have been pretty intense for a while now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. China banning non-masculine enough men off their reality TV programs.
Ooh.
Just thought
Tim, you'd be fine.
Pardon?
Tim, you'd be fine.
Well, that's why I agree with this.
I can see another live for you.
Trying to look
Wow.
masculine and trying to remember things starting from now. I'm speaking for myself, whoever said that. It's Teachers' Day, or has been, it was yesterday, Teachers' Day around, I was going to say around the world, but it's certainly in Singapore. I don't know if it's around the world, Teachers' Day, but if it
to the
is,
teachers.
yeah, if you're watching, it's been a tough ride for the teachers because, especially with schools closing, schools opening, schools closing, schools opening. In some countries, it's been going on. Australia has been going on for ages, and it's tough on the teachers. It's tough on the parents, of course. Parents
we have a Parents' Day.
But it's also tough on the teachers who are parents.
Tough on teachers and parents, and tough on the teachers trying to keep the kids engaged and on curriculum.
Exhausting, right? Exhausting.
Yep. So kudos to the teachers.
All right. So one of the highlights in the news for me this week has been the ABBA is going to be releasing a new album in November, and they're going to be doing some virtual concerts. I'm very excited about that. Well done. But a serious one. I can do the serious one if you guys have any news items that have been capturing your imagination.
See if I can find some bell-bottom pants just to be like in time zone.
Yeah.
First of all, I got to say for the ABBA one, kudos to them for doing this. This is amazing. They're basically they're going to avatar themselves. So they're basically they're wearing that. That's for animation. So they're wearing that so that they can do the moves, and then their avatar on the screen will be what everybody sees. So it won't be like 4 people with walking frames. It'll be 4 young, amazing things appearing on the screen. But it's amazing. It's just, and they've got a new album out. Kind of amazing. I just thought, oh, here we go again. I'm just
thinking it's time to dust off my hairbrush again.
I do love it. I mean, I got to say, I'm an ABBA fan. I'm not ashamed to say it. It's love them. Okay. Yep. What else?
Anyone else? I've got a serious one to finish off with.
Oh, there are 2 before you do that. The other one that seems to be sitting in the headlines, which New Zealand supermarket terror stabbing.
I haven't read up about that, but yeah.
Yeah, apparently a known.
Sorry, are we still in the middle of comedy right now? Sorry.
No, it was a real one.
There's no comedy, and probably not the best time for it. But I mean, that's to be fair, that's local news. Although it's hitting international headlines for some reason, possibly because New Zealand seems to be this sort of place to be in case of any horrible place, and so possibly people are putting that up. But when there's thousands in terror in other places, I do find what do we talk about? So I guess if you're from New Zealand, you definitely want to know about that. But the one thing that is not really getting I'm not seeing so much of it, the Paralympics.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing that Singaporean swimmer in the backstroke retained gold in the S2 50 meters, which is amazing. That's Yip Pin Siu.
She's picked up 2 gold now.
Yeah, there's a second goal. That was a second goal. But she retained the title for that backstroke, which is awesome in Tokyo. But yeah, I'm not. I guess it's the way the Paralympics has always been, in that we get the odd really amazing story, but we don't follow it as much as the other one, which is a bit sad, but still.
I agree. All right, so the bit of news I was expecting one of you guys to bring it up is the Texas six-week abortion ruling. I don't know if you guys have been reading about that. Definitely have a look at it.
I did see, and it's one of those ones I don't have words that I could share on family television.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's please read up on what I'm going to share on the weekend in my weekend reads. It's totally infuriating, and we need to be aware of it around the world because, look, I don't see a lot of countries in Asia sort of adopting or following this. I think they do leave their women to make those decisions and not get involved in that side of things. Not obviously all countries in Asia, but it's something I've always admired about most of the countries in Asia. Women get on with it. The problem I find with this ruling is it's so insidious. So basically anyone who reports on people giving or getting abortions can get a pretty significant financial reward. I think it's about $10,000 US. So there's this incentive for people to neighbor, basically. Yeah, it's pathetic. But one of my friends, Denise Chai, who's one of my smarty pants friends who's in the US, she put up a picture and she called it the Texas Taliban. And I just was like, yeah, if people don't get the connection between controlling women and women's rights and this ruling, then really I'm quite concerned for the future of America. But,
So
Joe,
can you tell me what the ruling is again? The ruling is
a woman is not allowed to get an abortion after 6 weeks. And obviously most women don't even know that they're pregnant by 6 weeks. So for any reason, including rape or incest. So it take aside opinions on abortion. It's to me, a woman should be able to choose what she does with her body. And of course, the big thing about it all is where are men in the equation? Because there's two parties in that pregnancy, right? And there's no punishment towards men. So it's just another way of controlling women. And it makes me feel sick that American women have to deal with this. And the far right, religious far right, are on the move, and they have been for decades to get this sort of legislation in place. But Biden said he's all out to stop it, so let's see what they do. But the Supreme Court didn't get involved in the decision, so let's see.
But doesn't New York allow abortion up to term?
No country allows abortion up to term. It's murder.
I thought New York does.
No. And that's part of the propaganda that goes around, that all these countries, even New Zealand was put out as one of those countries that allows up to full term. Full term is murder. It's up to 22 weeks is about normal, but beyond 22 weeks is if there's a physical disability and the baby's incapable of surviving up to term. There's reasons, but it's up to 22 weeks, which is the normal terms in just every country on earth. And I don't know any country that allows full term.
Well, what we just saw really basically is what happens because of all the misinformation, because that idea was being put out by the far right, and it was quoted and it was sent out. And a lot of people sincerely believe that was the case, that is that somewhere in the world that's where it happens, and we don't want that kind of thing. So it's the bogeyman kind of thing they're doing.
They basically came up with the time when a baby can viably exist outside the womb.
Yeah,
is from that point you are not able to have an abortion, and that is consistent. And I'm very happy to see evidence otherwise. But every piece of evidence anyone's ever sent me hasn't been wrong, hasn't been right. It's been part of the propaganda. So, yeah. Anyway, infuriating. So that's my final happy piece of news. But one of the things before we head off is we wanted to talk about the concept of achieving consensus. So we've talked about this a lot in the last 3 weeks. How do we get people to listen? How do we get people to cooperate, to work together for the common good for all of mankind, not just for ourselves or our own communities? And it's obviously a big, big challenge. So one of the things that I've noticed is when I speak to people who are vaccine hesitant, so I'm not talking about people who are never going to get the vaccine, just the people who are hesitant, every time they say to me, I'm just so confused. I get so much information. I don't know where to look. I don't know where to go for the right information. But whether it's COVID, and, I think we agree that vaccination is the way forward. We've got I think globally, there's the percentage of the population, if we're going from a democratic perspective, percentage of the population is vaccine sort of positive, right? We're always going to have people who are against it, but we need a consensus if we're going to overcome it. Same for the climate crisis, right? So what can we do? How can we work harder to build consensus within our communities versus the rage, division that is the only thing that we seem to be achieving right now? So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts? Anna, do you want to start?
There's a thing that I've been working on as an idea, but it's always been controversial, right? I mean, I really think too much of the world suffers from too much democracy, and that's really it. We're losing, I think, the battle on a lot of things because we value something which, in the long term, isn't as much of a thing that it's not as important really, because. Like if we look back at this time, will we look back and say, oh, we conquered COVID, or along the way we trampled our rights and I didn't get to decide certain things? I mean, we saved 1 million lives, but we didn't all get to choose whether we had a vaccine. I mean, it's one of those things that we look back on, we won't value as much. But I mean, it's one of the ideas that I always hate finding the good ideas from the side I consider the bad side. So while listening to some of these right-wing conversations, I've heard an idea that we're suffering now from being too woke. We're working too hard at being woke. And some of these ideas have to be, like democracy itself, making sure that everybody is in on the agreement. I think consensus, as it is as well, is something which can really stop things that need to be done quickly from getting done. Just because someone in the back of the bus goes, I'm not so sure about this. And there is something to be said about leadership, about taking a step forward and doing the thing, just to do it and get something done. And sometimes, things are going to be wrong, but most times it's only when things are done that something does happen.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. But like you said, it's not a popular thing, especially in Western countries where we hold on to democracy so tight. But is democracy the answer to our problems? Are we all happy? Are we having a good time, right? And then in a case of a global pandemic and the climate crisis, are we going to have to look at something? Because if we don't all do the right thing, I think we are going to have to look at doing something. And so trying to get to consensus before we're forced to do something, I think, maybe we won't have as much backlash, but we don't seem to get that message that we're part of a community and we have to move together forward, or we're not going to make it.
Yeah, no, there's this thing about, like, I look at it this way, right? When it's time to prepare a meal, we don't go to every single person in the household and go, okay, everybody, it's time to cook, and we all get together and cook. We go to the people who are good at doing the cooking, and we try and get them to do it, and we hope that they will do a good job. That's the kind of thing that I feel that should be done with a lot of things, and when it comes to decision making or policy making and stuff like that, this whole thing about trying to get everybody's point of view across. I mean, I'm guilty of doing that. I'm the person who actually wants to hear all of that. But really, when it comes to policy, it has to be someone taking the wheel. Like that's why when you mentioned the whole thing about Singapore and how Singaporeans felt about climate change, the thought that came to mind was that, but the good thing is it's kind of irrelevant because the government's decided to do something about it. And they're going to continue, and they've done it, and they're going to be investing in it. And even if the opinion isn't that significantly behind that, I think it'll get done here as well. So that kind of thing is, I think, what we need more of.
But we do need Singaporeans to stop the trash, to stop the consumerism, to stop filling those islands of landfill with rubbish, right? But the other issue, of course, on the table is trust. And in a country like Singapore, there is very, very high trust measured in the government to do the right thing by the citizens. So they do the right thing for the majority of people most of the time. And it's a reason I admire the government, but that's obviously not attractive to countries like Australia or America. But trust is it's been eroding for decades, and that's to me is the focus area. All governments, all institutions, businesses, charities, all need to turn around and say, how do we get trust back? And then do it. And it's complete transparency. The secrecy, the hidden conversations. We need to be completely transparent if there's any chance of getting trust back.
The challenge is we can't be completely transparent all the time. And because the reality is there's a lot of covert operations going on. We can't be completely transparent with military. We can't be completely transparent with national security. We can't be completely transparent with a bunch of stuff. So at what point are we going, well, this is okay to be completely transparent in this? I mean, as a leader, when you're a leader as well, you can't be completely transparent all the time, even though you want to be. When I get told by this is when I was working in corporate, I got tapped on the shoulder and said, we're going to have to make 15% of the people redundant. And then the people are going, are we going to be made redundant? I can't be completely transparent because we can't tell them until we've sorted out everything that's going to happen in August or something or other. And that's 3 months away at the time. It was like I couldn't be. So we've got to equip people with being able to understand that there's bad stuff coming, but how do I communicate with my people, and how do I at least take care of them? How do they know that I've got their back, even if it's bad news coming.
Yeah.
Because that's what I tried to do with those that I could that I could mention. Look, you might want to start preparing something, or I had to do something with some of them. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do is make a bunch of people redundant.
Yeah.
And so
you know that big 3 month vacation you were planning on applying leave for? Well, you don't have
we're
to.
paying for it.
But the comment about security and stuff, I totally agree, right? There's things you can't. But when your country's underwater or it's too hot to live and you no longer have a nation, those sort of issues aren't really relevant anymore, and we're sort of hurling towards that. So I think a lot of the time, and we were talking about this last week, our thinking always goes back to how it was, but the thinking forward needs to be how it's going to be, and how it's going to be. When you look at the maps of the world so I looked at 2100 of where humans will be able to live, and I actually think that time frame is much less than 2100. The nations that we're all part of today will no longer exist, and there'll be clusters of us in various parts around the world, probably forming new nations. So I think we've got to start thinking in that way, because
I think it's a concept. So it's too much change. That feels like redefining national boundaries. Seems like it's too much.
I think what we need is time travel. I mean, and I say that in this context, where we are right now, and one of the ways that I've heard that has been very effective for people to get a sense of how other people live, is the use of VR, and when it's done really well, you can be immersed in that situation where so the concept that I'd heard of was I think in New York they had an exhibition to help people experience Syria, and when they were immersed in that experience, when they came out of it, they really had a sense of it. They understood the situation much more. The problem with the future right now, it's too abstract, as in like the imaginations of most people are not big enough to understand how bad it's going to be. And I think it should be left to artists and people who can create that impression and that experience and that sort of thing, and bring it forward in time for people now to experience in a meaningful way. So I think there's a need for, and I always talk about this, that there's a need for corporate benevolence, private benevolence. You need somebody who really, really needs to do this and has the means as well to get behind that. And you need this huge, I see it as a huge art project, where you want to bring the what is inevitable if we don't change anything to the present, let people experience that and have that moment, that Christmas Carol experience. I mean, it's profound, but you really do get that. I mean, once you really, really see what tomorrow is like, and you can feel that and go like, oh, this is really where I don't want to go, then you start doing something about that. Otherwise, it's just the abstract thing. You just think, okay, it's something there. It's sort of hazy. It's not real. It's disassociative.
I love that.
But I mean, I do like it. But it's for me. It kind of still needs to be. Any small thing that we do as individuals feels irrelevant without enough people with big enough influential support to make a decision that is monumentally population shifting. So, for example, I keep going back to it. It's government and leaders of big business in particular. Everybody else can mass together and which is, I guess, where everybody's sort of coming from. Those people who are championing it, kind of some of the stuff we're talking about, go out there and make a difference. It still needs the buy-in of the big guys and gals, the people who are running countries and the people who are running businesses that can make the big difference. Because, I was vegetarian for a while. It didn't save one animal. Recycling, the problem's getting worse. I mean, it's like, well, what's the point? So it gets to the what's the point level until somebody goes, we're doing this, and our entire organization is now going to run off wind power, and it's just like, oh my gosh, now it's starting to shift. Now, is that because I was recycling? I don't think so. I think it's because the noise was getting the social pressure was starting to go, I'm going to deal with you and I'm not going to deal with you because of this. That said, I'm still buying stuff probably from people who are doing crappy stuff to the environment. You know, I'm still getting in a car that's using fossil fuel, because that's the cab that shows up. You know, I'm feeling frustrated because I feel that one person trying isn't moving the needle. So what do we do to get the needle really moved?
So you know that old experiment, blue eyes, brown eyes. I think I can't remember the name of it, but it's been shown to be one of the most disturbing and also most effective ways to have people be placed in that situation and to really feel something. So it's about that, and it's something that's tied up to what I talked about last week in hypnosis, when you try to link and make the connection between what you're doing and that outcome much more real. So I think we need to approach it in those ways. If you rely on people to just arrive at that point, it's just not going to happen. There's no way that's going to happen. I mean, problems with race have been around for the longest time, and it took so long for something to come along like the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment, for that to become something that people could really now understand and feel and get even a greater sense of. And it still hasn't even fixed the problem, but it really was a way for them to feel what it was like to be other just because of something that you couldn't control. So this thing about the connection, that's why it's an artistic challenge. That's why it's something where you're going to try and say, how do I make this real for someone? How can I create maybe a virtual experience, whatever it is, that allows my actions today to show up in 30 years where I can realize that, hey, this was me. You know, I think that would be powerful, and it needs to be a movement. It can't be just about to try and visualize this and talk it out and say it to somebody else. It's just not going to work. The human imagination, as much as it is capable of a lot of things, isn't that good. You know, people can't really imagine it. People really can't feel it. So I think we do what we do because we can justify it to ourselves, because we think things are going to be bad, but we go like, yeah, it's not that bad, so I'm still going to get into my car. It's okay. But if it becomes so real that every time you get into the car, you feel the destruction that's happening because of it, it's going to make it that much harder for you to do.
Yeah, you know, I think
being able to move across from, because part of the catch-22 is we can take individual actions, but quite a vast part of the system is outside our ability to directly influence. So like, what would be wonderful, and like if we're thinking about some really practical things, anybody here who listens to this show, if you can work with any of the transport provision companies, you know, in Singapore, you know, the Grab, you know, the Grabs, the Gojeks, or Uber, or Lyft, or any other ones around the world, so that you can actually say, I want an electric car and I don't want a fossil car. Then that would give us as individuals the ability to demonstrate and express our preference. You know, to Tim's point. So sometimes it's, as you know, as individuals in a business, you know, we can have conversations with other people that help these twists show up. So we can, okay, actually there is movement, there is opportunity, there is reason to move and create, rather than just to be stuck in status quo. Because you know, that at one level is part of the frustration, feeling like I'm trying, but I'm not seeing any difference. And the more businesses and organizations create that opportunity, I mean, like one of the reasons why Tim and I have been so big on B1G1 for so long is, I know for myself, it gave me the ability to start going like, I'm doing this. I want to make sure that there's other good that's coming out of what I'm doing. And I can see it. And I don't have to be a multi-billion-dollar organization. I know that over the last decade, there's over 1,400,000 days of water that have been made available because of actions that my organization has done. And that's, you know,
empowering.
It's exactly. It's like, okay, other things that I've done in my life may not have had the impact I wanted, but I do know that that's created an impact beyond me and beyond the organizations I serve. It's created a bigger one out in the world. And so
I think
finally,
what this is the choir that's doing its singing and it's doing really well. It's got its song, it's got everything right now, right? What we need to do is do the caroling, right? Which is to get to other people so that we can sing that song and people can hear it and get the spirit of Christmas, you know, sort of in them. That's the problem. The problem is you have the people who care. They're still the minority. They're doing this stuff, and because they are a minority, it's not having enough of an impact, and they're just frustrated trying to have more people be like them. But the tools.
I don't think it's a minority. I think when it comes to the climate, we've definitely passed the tipping point of knowledge and awareness and concern.
What's a tipping point?
Yeah.
So you answer. I'll go.
Oh, it's the point at which we can't. No, it's not a point.
No return. The point of no return. Past the point of no return.
We can't go back. It's the part in Back to the Future when the car went past there. He's going to go off the cliff.
Yeah, when there's enough of us that care and are committed to a course of action. Anyway,
that's it.
What Joe said about the artists, I absolutely agree. But I think when you use the word artists in people's mind, it narrows. I think it's creative people who are capable of communicating in whatever form they can communicate, who believe in the crisis that the world's facing in whatever way, shape or form. They're communicating and embracing that chance. So one of my things on achieving consensus is intelligent participation on social media, sharing knowledge in a way that is not judgmental, is not patronizing. It's just, look, guys, when you see the data coming in that supports the point of view that you want to share, you just gently show up and you keep sharing it. And over time, people start paying attention. And I know that's true because that's what I've been trying to do for a very long time. So really getting the people on social media, embracing the opportunity to be a voice. And too many smart people are not on social media because they can't stand the trolls and they can't stand the narcissists and they can't stand all the ugliness of social media. Well, we can drown them out if enough of us get on board. The other thing, especially when it comes to COVID, if you think you're right and they think they're right, well, no one's listening to each other. So if you want to change someone's mind, you've got to be gentle. You've got to listen to their point of view without attacking them. If you start getting emotional with somebody, just pause the conversation and go back when you both calm down, because you're not going to change anyone's mind from that point of view. So I think the people who have got the ability to be calm rather than get emotional and angry and frustrated, if you can be calm, I think we can do a lot more. But just keep sharing knowledge from really good sources. There's a lot of good information out there. People are confused. They don't know where to look. Show them where to look. Help them find the good stuff.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's important to be, it's important to show up in social media as all aspects of yourself. This may be a lot of people may disagree because they're using it just as their marketing platform. I think you need to show up as a human being. I think people want to know who you are and what you think. And if they don't do business with you for that, then so what? I mean, if I know that for some people that's going to be a big deal, and the Marcoms people are going to be no, everything has to be go through me.
Is it Tim or me? Oh, we're all popping in and out. All right, so right. Let's wrap it up because we've been going for longer than normal and we keep promising an hour, but we never do because there's a lot going on in the world. Tim will be back with us in a minute. What have you guys been watching this week as a distraction from the news and the events? Anything got your attention?
Well, I've been binging on a podcast, which has been the theme of it is she's a therapist to atypicals. People. Anna,
can you talk? I think Joe seems to. Yeah, Joe and Tim are out at the same time. Must be something in Singapore. What have you been? Have you been watching anything?
I can see everybody.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, so Joe's been on a podcast. Me, I'm a reader rather than a listener. So so the book that I've been reading this week is this one, The Future We Choose: The Stubborn Optimist's Guide to the Climate Crisis.
Good.
Which I've actually really, really enjoyed. Just because it's a different angle and perspective on what might be possible.
Well, I watched The Day the Levees Broke again by Spike Lee. We on DVD. It's that old. But I don't know. When the 16th anniversary came up, I felt compelled to watch it and was horrified anew at how badly those people were treated. So Tim and Joe, have we got you both back? You both went haywire there for a bit. Are you watching anything?
Well, I like I said, this what I've been binging on is a podcast called The Bright Sessions. The Bright Sessions is a fictional work based on a therapist that works to help people with superpowers. Basically, they have strange abnormal powers.
Cool.
What's really nice about the show is that it has I think it helps therapize people who actually are listening in just as human beings. You hear some things and you pick up some things and some ideas. So if you're looking for something that's interesting, both as a work of fiction as well as something that is positive for mental health, check it out. It's The Bright Sessions.
The Bright Sessions. I like the idea of that. Tim, anything got your imagination?
Mine's stupid.
Stupid's good.
You want stupid?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I've been binging a little bit on a Facebook group called the Penitentiary. The Penitentiary.
I've seen you commenting on our science humor page. So yeah, you look like you've been pretty active, actually. All right.
I mean, I've just come to the conclusion that a plateau is the highest form of flattery. You know, for example, that's the penitentiary. So I know they're all dad jokes, but they're
doomed.
Some of them fantastic. So it's great because if you're living in a house with somebody who is full of dad jokes, you can send them there and they will respond and get that out of their system so that they can actually be a normal person at the dinner table.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good tip. All right. So let's wrap it up. Thank you for joining us. We're going a bit longer, but hopefully it's just sort of in the background and keeping you company, hearing our lovely voices. Anna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been absolutely fabulous to be in the know.
I'm sure that you are going to be joining the No Show in the future. But yeah, no, thanks so much. And Joe and Tim, you guys rock. Do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, I'm going to say goodbye now. I just say hello as well to Jennifer Thorman, who's just joined us on the live stream as we're about to say goodbye. So thank you for joining us.
And thanks for your comment. Gloria Miller, we also heard you as well. Conversation had moved on a little bit by the time I had seen your comment about public schools, but thank you for participating. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Andrea, once again for bringing it all together and making it happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil. Bye.
See you next Friday.
See ya.
All right. Bye.